we're gonna talk a bit about jazz, and I hope it's useful. And I thought it would be fun today for us to speak about what can we learn to build a really good team from jazz. And jazz is a type of music that we're going to hear a lot today. And I guess like learning about teams is so important for us because we're all part of teams, right? When we are like at school or in a work group or at home, like partnering with someone in a game or in sports or later on when you go to work. So I think like knowing what makes a team great is such an important skill for us. So let's do it. First thing, I guess like how did I end up here and why am I speaking about jazz and teams so that you like can know a bit about a bit of my context. I'll keep it super brief. So it's very simple. I throughout all my life I've played a lot of sports and a lot of team sports. So a lot of football. I'm not sure how popular football is in Canada. But I imagine you have like a bunch of other sports in there that are also useful to draw insights from. And also later on, so these are all like very team-oriented dynamics that I was absorbing. And later on, I always played a lot of instruments, but when I went to college, I started playing saxophone a bit more seriously. And I went really into jazz and this type of music. And there it was like an explosion of creativity and new dynamics of playing with other musicians. I was playing in trios, in quartets, in big bands, and it was such a novelty of innovation that I was like, oh my God, like what is happening here? And I really like this music. And in parallel, I was also studying management and learning a lot about how economics and building companies. And I know you've had like some super interesting lessons on entrepreneurship and solving people's problems. You talked with Tuan about entrepreneurship and with, I think, Brent as well on how to build a business. So I went a lot into that. And later on, which is what I do now, went to be a product manager in software companies to build products that can be apps or websites or anything that solves people's problems.
My dad's an engineering project manager.
Sorry?
My dad is an engineering project manager.
All right, so I imagine there's a lot of similarities in what we do actually. And I hope like that this will resonate as well with your father, which is being either a project or a product manager, you will be trying to get the team to be very, very good. And then while I was trying to do this and working with all these different people like software engineers, data scientists, designers, and a lot of like different skills, I kept thinking on the music and all the things that I learned in jazz and how could I draw from it to bring to the teams. So I studied a bit more. And what we're going to see today is what I studied from jazz and what I learned while playing and brought to the teams I work with. And now actually I help a bunch of other people and a lot of teams across many companies to perform better. So I want to say, if you have any questions, anything that I say that is weird or that you don't understand, or if you have ideas to build on top of what I'm saying, just interrupt me. I have 2 screens so I can see you here. So if you want to talk while I'm talking as well, we can do it for sure. Let's get going. First thing I want to do 2 questions just to start, which the first one is, do you know what is jazz and have you listened to this type of music ever? And if so, like, do you like it? What do you know about jazz so far?
Jazz is one of my favorite genres of music.
All right, why?
Because I like all the different instruments playing together.
Cool, so there's a lot of different instruments. And what else? So jazz can sound very different, like there's a lot of different things. So one of the things you just mentioned is there's a lot of instruments. And many instruments means that in these teams of jazz, there's a lot of different perspectives. And this is a good thing because people can learn a lot from each other as well. Some other thing that is very, very important in jazz is that there's a lot of solos and improvisation. Solos is when someone is improvising and the other people in the jazz band are supporting this improvisation, which means there's a lot of risk-taking and innovation. Because if you're improvising, you're doing something that was never done before, and you do it live while you're performing. So you take a lot of risks and you innovate a lot. And also it's very reactive in the moment, right? So because we are improvising, people need to hear a lot each other. And there's a lot of creative collaboration because of this. So as you can see, different perspectives and creative collaboration are things that already nudges into, there's something here that I would like to learn more for my teams, regardless of where we are working or playing or performing. So let's go into this, speaking about teams. I want to know if you have any example of a great team you were part of, and why was that? Anyone? Ninja, what do you think? So you have no ideas. I've seen in other lessons that you play, for example, Minecraft, and you can also play it in groups. Have you ever played it in groups, or you always go the individual mode? You're very quiet today. Okay, I'm gonna go forward. Feel free to speak whenever you want. Let's see. From jazz, I think the key important thing to learn about team is the people inside each group of jazz. And this is, for example, a company I was part of, and a team I was part of in the past called Monzo. And what was special about this team was not necessarily just each individual and how good everyone was. It was how well people interacted together in their interactions. So a team can be full of very smart people, but if they cannot connect and interact well, that's relatively poor as a team. And we care about this. So here am I in the middle of all the crowds, if you can spot like my little face there. And why do we care about this? Well, we care about this and people in their interactions because the outcome of a team will depend on how well we work together, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to be in a team. So let's dive into this. This is our agenda for today. We're going to go full circle on this, and don't worry if it sounds a bit weird for now, because I'm going to take you through all of these things together. And we're going to first see what is the role of a leader in jazz, and how can we learn from leaders and all these leaders' important things in a team. And also we're going to talk a lot about team membership traits and the dynamics that each individual member also has to bring to the team. And we're going to keep an eye on two things that you see here on the outside: plasticity and elasticity. These are like weird words, so we're going to start with those. What comes to mind when I talk about elasticity? Anyone has any clue?
Elastic, stretchable.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So an elastic is very stretchable, but what happens when you stop stretching it?
It retracts.
Exactly. So exactly that. So elasticity, what I mean by elasticity here is when something returns to its original shape after being deformed. So if you look here on the right, this hockey stick, look at how bent is it right now. It's bending so much, like look at this. But then as if it was magic, it retracts again to its original shape once we stop pushing it, right? And this is a good thing in teams. Teams that are elastic are teams that go beyond their original scope, and they explore a lot, and they have a lot of creativity. It's something good. On the other hand, we need to be careful not to stretch it too much, and we need to prevent plasticity. So plasticity is just the opposite. When something is deformed forever after an action is done. So you can see this poor watermelon here just explodes, and it's very unlikely that it's going to be back into shape, right? And this is a bad thing in a team, because it means the team is going into chaos or losing its direction or focus. And as a leader, we want to prevent this to happen. And as a team member, we also want to prevent this to happen. So let's see how. Let's start. So these are the two things we want to keep an eye on, right? Preventing plasticity, and we'll see how many things will prevent it, and enable elasticity. And we'll see how we can do this. So let's start with the leadership part of a team. The role of the leader is very important, as you might imagine, but leaders in jazz, they're very interesting because they are very good references for the team. They shape a lot the direction. They even select the musicians, but also because there's a lot of improvisation and everyone can improvise, leaders in jazz will choose to stop being a leader, and they will say, yeah, you can lead now, I'm off. And this is very important for us as a learning, and as we will see. And these, what I will call dual leaders, being a leader and not being a leader, is something that is so important to us. So in the first part of being a leader, you want to, if you are in a team, you want to embrace leaderfulness. So a team full of leader, right? And we can do two things here. Let's see the first one. So the first one is that as a leader, you have an opportunity to set the direction, set the tone for this team. And I want to show you how. So let's see if we can hear some music now. I think the sound is going to sound a bit loud when I start playing the music. So if you need to adjust the volume, please do. So the first music you're going to hear is from Charlie Parker, which is a saxophone player. And the way he set the tone or set the direction for this group of musicians was he came in and said, look, I want to play this structure of music. And the structure is the one we see here on the screen. You don't need to go a lot into detail here, so I'm not going to explain a lot about music. But let's just keep, like, if we are in a scale, Charlie Parker said that they wanted to play the chord, so the set of notes that represents the first degree of a scale. And then he said that we want to play the 7th degree, then the 3rd, then the 6th, then the 2nd, and so on and so on. And this was a very fast-paced music with a lot of chord changes. So there's 20 chords in total here, so a lot of change. And he said, I want us to improvise here, I want this rhythm like super fast, and I want us to improvise in this type of jazz language, which was called bebop. So he was setting the direction, and I want you to hear, I'm gonna follow with my mouse. Can you see my arrow? Well?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So I'm gonna follow it so that you just at least know where we are, but don't worry about it too much. It's just more for the feeling of the music. Listen to it, how fast is it, and how much change there is. Let's go. All right. So what we see here is that it's very fast. There's a lot of changes. You saw like my arrow was moving all across these different chords. And this is how Charlie Parker set the direction. And I want to show you now a different way of being a leader at setting a direction from Miles Davis, which is a great trumpet player. And he one day came into the studio and he chose really good musicians for this album that he was recording. And he said, you know what? Today, we're going to do something different, and I'm just going to give you 2 chords. So instead of the 20 that we see here, Miles Davis came in and gave them 2. So we have one here, a different one here, and then it comes back to the same. And this is all the structure there is to this music. And he said, I want us to improvise on top of this structure, very loose, but I want you to digest each chord for a long time. And also I want us to play a bit slower, and I want us to feel smoother. So the environment of this song is so different. And the direction Miles Davis gave to the musicians is completely different. Let's hear how it sounds. Okay, so we can hear a bit of a different mood to this music. And look at what Miles Davis said talking about this album. So I didn't write out the music for Kind of Blue, which is this album, but I brought in sketches for what everybody was supposed to play because I wanted a lot of spontaneity. So there's 2 important things here. Miles Davis, as a leader, was setting the direction, but one, he chose really good musicians for this. So he knew the vision and the aesthetics, so how it should feel, the music. And he chose very well for this setting, but also he brought in sketches. So he framed the problems and said, these are the sketches of things that we will play on top of. So as a leader, the lesson we can take from this is that we want to make sure we choose really well and design the team according to our vision, and we set the direction. So in companies, for example, you might have heard the founder sets the vision and the direction for the team, which is quite important. And we also want to influence how the team solves problems. And this is good because it's preventing chaos, right? The crazy watermelon. And I'm not sure if you really remember Nemo, Finding Nemo, but in this movie, we see a great example of a strong leader when Nemo's father just finds this net of fish and he's gonna go, okay, we need to get you out of here. Everyone swim to the bottom, all in the same direction. And suddenly he becomes this leader that sets the direction. And because he does this, we can see here on the right, the fish can then actually get to the bottom and break the net and go free. So it's a good example for us to also see how can this be applied out of jazz and setting a direction for people. Can this go wrong? Well, actually, yes, because you can set a direction and it can be, for example, super challenging and the team can struggle, or sometimes people can get lost in this direction. And as a leader, you would want to be paying attention and serve what I call here as an emergency anchor to give back focus to the team and get the team to, shape a bit the direction so that it goes according to plan. And in jazz, you see this quite often. And I brought a music here that I hope you'll see the example coming. So John Coltrane is another saxophone player. And he did this music called Giant Steps, which is quite difficult. And what we're gonna hear now is the piano player is gonna try to improvise. But you will see that he's struggling a lot. Like he's really not keeping up with the pace. He's trying to improvise, and it's gonna sound like when you have an idea and you can't really articulate your thoughts. So you do say something and then you scrap it and try again. It's gonna sound like this. He's gonna go and stop. So it's not fluid at all. And let's hear how it sounds at first. So you see, it's like he's trying, but he stops and then comes back again. And he's just struggling. It's really difficult, this music. And actually he gives up on improvising. And now he's just gonna, with his, all his fingers, play the structure of the music. Very slow, just try to keep up at least with the structure of the music. Let's hear. So you see, he just gave up and said, okay, I'm just gonna go do the structure. And John Coltrane, the leader, is not really liking this. So he's gonna step in, because he's listening, as an emergency anchor and show the musicians, hey, this is the direction of where I wanted to go. And I need to intervene and show you where we should go and keep back to focus. So he brings back the energy that he wanted, that he envisioned for this song. So listen to the difference when the piano player is struggling, and then when the saxophone comes in, listen to the difference of the energy that we see. Oh my God, right? Look at the difference. So the piano player is like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And then John Coltrane comes in and explodes with energy and shows where he wants to take the music, right? Gives a new direction to the music. So really good example of serving as an emergency anchor here, which is a great learning for us as a leader, because we want to, even though we want to keep challenging our teams, we want to bring focus if the teams are getting confused or distracted. And we want to act as a reference if and when needed. And this is preventing plasticity, of course, it's preventing chaos. And do you remember the film Ratatouille, the film where there's this rat that is a great chef? He's also,
yes.
Yeah, it's a great one. And there's this scene where he serves as an emergency anchor because they are serving a dish and he knows exactly what he wants it to taste like, but he's going to see the direction going off. So he's going to intervene, and we're going to see it. He's inside the hat of linguine, which is this guy that is cooking.
Come get it! Oh, whoa, whoa, I forgot the anchovy peppers. Don't you dare.
I'm not.
All right, so great example of sometimes being a leader is not easy, and there's some friction when you need to refocus the team, which is what we've seen now, like it's just like intervening. So for example, this could be things like, as a leader, you could say, that's problem X, which we are already trying to address. Let's focusing on our main goal. Or this is important, thanks, but it's a future problem. Let's discuss this instead. Or if you're in a sports team, for example, you could go, hey, we're now in defense until the end of the game. No crazy attack plays. Stop doing that. So you're serving as an emergency and giving the team direction. So the team leader was embracing leaderfulness, right? The team full of leader. And another thing that we saw in jazz and that we can learn from it is that the leader decides to embrace leaderlessness, which is a team without a leader. And this is incredible because it gives us the insight where the leader can choose not to be a leader at all, and that can drive team performance. So in jazz, we see this a lot. Have you noticed like how people improvise and they switch? So sometimes it's the trumpet player, sometimes it's the saxophone player or the piano. Everyone can improvise. And this allows, or this demands the leader to step down and say, hey, now you lead. So remember Miles Davis, we saw in the first, in the music with very few notes. This is the guy here. And this is them playing that same music. And the saxophone player is now leading the team, right? He's improvising, he's shaping the team in new directions and exploring a lot. And he's just stepping out and allowing the team to explore new things without him. So he's just going with the team and assuming the team's effort together. We're gonna see this live. I'm gonna stop when we see Miles Davis, and I want you to pay attention to what is Miles Davis doing. So remember, Miles Davis is the leader of the group, but there's a saxophone player now improvising. So this is Miles Davis here, okay? Okay, so what was Miles doing?
Nothing.
Exactly, he was just doing nothing. Actually, he was allowing others to lead, and he was just enjoying. He was actually removed from the stage show. Doing nothing sometimes is actually good, which is great insight from jazz musicians. And Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, said one thing, which is, it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so that they can tell us what to do, which is just showing how he could also be this idea of a servant leader, right? You allow people in your team to direct new shapes of exploration, and that's fine. So you assume the outcome as a team effort and not necessarily as something that the leader does alone by themselves. And by doing this, the leaders are doing what we call bringing a lot of psychological safety. So they are allowing the team to be comfortable in taking risks and in failing because they know the team is going to be there to support all at the same level. And this allows us to enable elasticity, to explore a lot. And I'm going to show you this example from another Pixar movie, which is Inside Out. Do you know this one? Yeah, I see some nodding heads. It's a great one. And we're going to see, so inside this girl's head, I don't remember her name, there's all these emotions. And usually, typically, joy was the leader of the emotions. But what we're going to see now is that joy understands that sadness can also take the lead. And it's also actually good for her to take the lead. And she's allowing, she's going with the team, stepping down as a leader and allowing sadness to lead on her behalf. Let's see.
Sick, where have you been? It's so late.
right? So what we see here is just what I was describing, like Joy is giving up on leadership and allowing someone else to lead it. But when we do this as a leader, when we are embracing leaderlessness, it's important that there's this common agreement within the team on how do we play, how do we go about our team effort. Why? Look at what a bass player once told me. So I think we always get lost while improvising, but never the three at the same time. Our pianist says that when we are playing at the edge of a cliff, if one of us is holding the others, then we can challenge the cliff. And they didn't talk about this explicitly. So it's something that they never discussed, but they knew was there. Like, yes, we can shift priorities and shift responsibilities, but there's always going to be someone there allowing us to do this, to prevent working into chaos. So to challenge a cliff, there's always someone there. And these common agreements that the leader needs to set up before embracing leaderlessness, before giving up being a leader, can be directly stated. So they can be principles or rules that you need to follow, or they can be indirectly stated. So they can be shared background, stories that you have together. And a lot of the times as well, a great way to learn and to have this common understanding is learn from mistakes, that you build this like common knowledge of things you should do, things you should not do. So a very simple example is at my home when I was younger, we used to bake every weekend. We would do baking, and my favorite one was doing a chocolate cake. And the whole family, cousins, my siblings, my parents, everyone was just at the same level. There was no leader. Everyone could bake anything. But we had this common agreement that we all had to keep our stations clean and the kitchen really neat so that it didn't all turn into a chaos. So while everyone was leading, everyone also knew what was the flexibility that we had within these like limits. That's really, really present in jazz as well. Okay, so we've seen how important it is to have a leader, and a leader that I call here a dual leader that is very present, but also is not present. How are we doing so far? All good?
Yes. Yes.
Cool. Feel free to stop me whenever you want. But there's something that we're missing, right? You see here this gray area. Being a dual leader, one that is a leader and a non-leader, is great, but it's not enough. It doesn't allow us to have a really good team. Why? We need to have very strong team membership traits and allow everyone within the team, regardless if they are leader or not, to have certain characteristics that then will allow the team to be very high performant. I'm going to go through them. There are 5 small things, and we're going to listen to a lot of music to learn about this. So the first one is you need to master individual competence. You need to be really good, right? Only when you're really good can you then challenge the team to go beyond the initial scope, right? So let's see an example. You remember Charlie Parker, the guy that played a lot in Superfast? He was then very good, but in the beginning, he was not that good. And I wanted to see, so this is a movie called Bird, which explores Charlie Parker's life. And I wanted to notice 3 things here. One is he's not yet that good, and that can harm a bit the performance of the other musicians that were expecting him to be good. Second, he's not aware of his own role and others' roles. So he's like, he doesn't know when to contribute or stop contributing. And third, most importantly, he's not listening at all the other musicians. So let's look at this clip and see, just look at the effect that has on the overall team performance and the other musicians' reactions.
Not bad. Get off.
Oops, so what happened here? Like it just broke completely to the point that the drummer said, like, you know what, just move. And he sent a piece of his drums. And what we see, what we can learn from this is that, and I talked with a lot of musicians while I was studying jazz as well. And it's that one, we want to have very well-defined roles within a team, and within a jazz, this is very important, right? So you need to be able to know how can you contribute and add value, but also when you should stop to contribute and allow others to add. And also you want to demonstrate capability in your core role, so that if everyone is really good, then you can depart from like a high standing point to explore a lot. Of course, this is not to say that every team needs to be amazing, full of like A players, but at least it needs to be discussed, like how can everyone contribute and add value so that the others can complement each other. So for example, if you're making a pizza, this team of 3 people is trying to attempt to make a pizza. If this guy is making the dough and stretching it, and this guy is putting the tomato sauce, and this guy is putting the salami on top, if one of them is not good and just doesn't put the tomato sauce, the outcome, which is trying to get pizzas to customers, will not be achieved in the best way possible. That ruins the team dynamic. But what is interesting in jazz is that there's a lot of what I call here like developing a shared skill set. So people share skills a lot so they can complement each other. And I want you to listen to this music and see if you can hear this. So usually in music, the piano player is responsible for some things. Like one of the things is harmony, which is the structure of the music, which you don't need to go into detail right now. But also I want you to notice the melody. So melody is like, it's a sequence of single notes, the one we can usually grasp in the tune, right? If you're singing something in a shower, you sing the melody. And the drums, they are usually responsible for the rhythm, right? The pace and the pace of the music and the beat of the song. But in this music, what we're gonna hear is that the piano player just wanted to explore something different. So he's trying to improvise, and he wanted to be exploring rhythm. So he's gonna play in a very rhythmic approach, setting the rhythm a lot. And the drummer is gonna go, oh, that's such a cool idea. And because I also understand about melody, because they also study everyone's roles, he's gonna step in and complement and try to play the melody so that the music overall sounds very rich and not just rhythmic. So let's listen to it and see if you can grasp it. So listen from now on, you're gonna hear the piano being very rhythmic. So he's gonna play really rhythmic, and because of this, the drummer is gonna try to sing the melody behind. So he's gonna go while playing the drums. So let's hear it. Right, so we can hear the drummer trying to complement. And again, I'm just going to go play again a mini beat. You're going to hear the drum playing the melody going da 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 again, just to complement, because the piano is really strong on the rhythm. Right, so this is a great example of having shared skills and allowing something great to happen, something new. So it allows for shifting roles on the spot, and that's a great thing because it can challenge. So if it's in sports, you can challenge your opponents by being very surprising, or you can, if you're discussing in a group, you can complement the ideas being discussed because you can complement each other. And there's something great happening here, which is if you share a skill set, it generates a lot of empathy. So empathy is when you can put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand how they feel, how they think. And this is great because when you actually are playing something that someone else is supposed to play, you understand how difficult it is, and you respect more, and you build a lot of trust within the musicians, which is a great insight for us when we are in a team. So I'm going to show you an example of where we can see this super visibly. So do you play hockey? or not at all?
Not at all.
But that's fine. I also don't play it, but I think this example is very illustrative. So, you know, the goalie, he has a specific core competence, right? Not allow anything to go into the goal and just like defend everything. But because they also share skills and he understands the roles of the others, if he sees an opening, he can actually take an advantage of it. So let's look at what happens here because they can actually share skills. Oops. So look at the goalie here. He's on the left with the disc there.
Crawford will go to the bench again. Rene will try it. Rene going deep for the empty net. It is bouncing. Oh!
Okay, so what we see here is like they complement each other, and the goalie actually saw an opening, and because he could, he just scored, which is a great thing for us to have in a team. Then I want to touch also on this thing, which is what I call here the need for us when we are in a team to balance a micro and a macro vision. So what is this, and why is it so important in jazz? So you know that in jazz, everyone improvises, right? So, and when you're improvising, you're taking the lead, and you're so focused on the notes and the combination of notes that you want to bring. So you're very, very attentive, like a microscope, solving your problems very microscopically with this micro vision. But at the same time, you need to know where you are in the music, if you're in the end, in the beginning, if someone else is meant to play now. So you want to keep this macro vision, this high level view of where you are. And also, by the way, keep an eye so that to see if the other musicians are coming with you or not. So I'm going to show you this example of Keith Jarrett, which is a piano player. And look how microscopically focused he is in his own solo. So he's improvising, and he's so focused that like his body is moving super weirdly, and he's even doing sounds with his mouth. So he's very microscopically focused on the problems he's trying to solve. Let's see. Right, so he's just so absorbed, like very microscopically controlling his performance. But we're going to see that he's balancing this macro vision because he knows exactly where he is in the song. He knows, and how do we know? Because he's going to look at the bass player just in a second. I'm going to play it. And he's going to look at the bass player to signal that he's finishing, but also to show others where we are in the music. And the bass player he's playing, he looks, acknowledges it, and looks left to talk with the drummer just by looking and say, hey, we are here in this section of the music and we're all together. So they're balancing this micro and macro vision. Let's see if you can see them exchanging looks. Right, so it was very subtle, but if you notice, at the end of the solo, the piano player is playing here, and then he's looking, and then again, they look to each other. And now they know where they are in the music, and they're balancing these visions. So it's very good because you want to get into the detail, but knowing where you want to go as well, also where you don't want to go, you know if other team members are coming too as well. And you can picture this as sort of like if you're in a car, say your dad is in a car, and when he's driving, you know that he's like taking care about like other cars next to you, and if there's a ball coming into the road and all these traffic lights, but at the same time, keeping this high level view of where are we going, right? In this case, we're like from City Hall to the Canadian Museum of Mystery. And it's not that one is more important than the other. You just need both. You need to balance both to achieve great things in a team. Cool. We're going to go into our last music, and we're going to hear, and we're going to spend just some minutes on this last tune to explore openness and acceptance, which is a thing that is really important in a team, and also a bit of trust here. So I'm going to play, and we're going to see, I think, like 4 examples within this music, and let's just follow along. Just a mini context. Joshua Redman is the saxophone player, and he's the leader. He composed this music. And but now, what we're going to hear just now, he's not leading. So again, he went with the team, remember, and he gave space for the guitar player to be improvising and leading the team. What we're going to hear actually is something that shows how authentic the leader is. Even that he's not playing, he's actively listening and he's supporting the musicians and being very authentic when he likes and when he doesn't like. And let's see if you can spot what he does now. Whoops, wait a minute. Where we are, 2:33. Okay. Perfect. Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened here? Did you notice? I'm going to put it again. So what we hear is the guitar player is just like he's exploring an idea, and Joshua Redman, the saxophone player, he's not playing, but he's listening, and he likes this idea and goes, yeah, just to support the ideas being discussed. See?
Yeah.
Right, so you can hear him reinforcing in a positive way what is being discussed, which is a great thing for a team member to show and to support. And I'm going to show you another example here where, so now the saxophone player is improvising. And what we're going to hear is that he's going to go and throw 7 notes, all very fast and very attached to each other, all the same notes. And I want you to listen. When you hear these notes, I want you then to focus on the guitar player and see how the guitar player is supporting the saxophone. So actually I have, let's see if I can show you. So he's going to play this note. And when you hear this note, da, 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 listen to the guitar just next to it. Okay, so it was here. So if you noticed, the saxophone is exploring a new idea, da, 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 and the guitar player, he's actively listening and he's saying, yes, I like that, and I will support you. And immediately he mirrors and goes trun, 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 as well. And it gives a lot of sense to what the saxophone player is playing, right? Let's see if you notice it again. Focus on the guitar. So it's on the background. It's more like when you are in a group and you say something and someone else goes and says, actually, I agree with this idea, and says the same in different words or just shows support. So that's what they are doing here. They are talking and supporting each other's ideas. And I want to show you here just 2 small examples more. One is here. So one is saying that, so listen, the saxophone is they are like chilling and playing a bit like a low mood, and the saxophone has a new idea and wants to grow. And by wanting to grow, he needs to trust that the team will also follow. And let's see how the other players pick up on this momentum growth from the saxophone player and also support this idea and build on top of it. And the team and the music just achieves a new strength. Let's see if you notice the momentum picking up. Okay, so what we hear now is that the saxophone was exploring this, and everyone was just next to the saxophone saying, okay, we're going to grow with you and become this much more louder music. So they are showing a lot of support, a lot of trust there. And this is key in jazz, and it happens a lot of time when you're improvising. So the key thing you can learn from this is that when you're in a team, regardless of the context, you want to be actively listening to others and complementing each other's ideas, and be what we call a lot of times a yes and type of person. So you say yes, and we could also explore this idea, or yes, and I will play next to you, instead of being a yes but type of person, which is yes, but that's different, or yes, but we tried that in the past. So it's very different, this attitude when you're a team, which will allow to a much more creative process which of course enables elasticity, right? And enables a lot of innovation. And finally, we saw, I'm going to skip this one. And no, actually, I'm going to tell this story. So, you know how the sticky notes were invented? Have you ever heard this story? Nope. So it's a great example of being open and accepting to people's ideas and explorations, because the Post-it note came to be when a guy was trying to make a super strong glue, and he was just trying different formulas. And one day came up with this glue that was actually just the opposite, very weak. So you put in a paper and the glue would stick for a bit, but you could take it out very easily and then put it again and take it out. So it was like, oh man, this is so boring. I failed again and I couldn't make this strong glue that I wanted. But the team around said, actually, that's a great idea. And we can actually do this a new product, which came to be the sticky note, which is based on this weak glue that they created by mistake. So it's a great example of you risking and allowing the team to fail together, but being open and accepting to new ideas. And the sticky note just came to be, which is a great thing for us to use nowadays. And we see that while all this was happening, there was a lot of trust within the team, right? So there was a lot of invisible dynamic here. And it's sort of like trust becomes the invisible engine of all of them. And we could speak about trust forever, but just to mention that it takes time to build, and it takes some effort, but you want to show a lot of vulnerability, which is what jazz players show a lot when they risk and they can fail together. And you want to show that you're authentic, like when the saxophone player was like, yeah, I like that, and show a lot of empathy, which of course will enable elasticity, allow you to explore a lot of different things. So we've come full circle, we've come a long way, and now know the jazz dynamics that would make our team awesome, and hopefully we learned a bunch. If you are more of a visual learner than like I am, for example, we also have this model based on all the examples. So just to recap, we want to avoid breaking to chaos like the watermelons that we saw, but also want to enable elasticity like the hockey stick. And how can we do this? Well, we can be a great leader setting a direction, like Finding Nemo, as we saw the fishes all going in the same direction. And also we can serve as an emergency anchor, like Ratatouille when he was like putting the sauce on top of that dish. But also we want to stop being a leader and allow others to do it, like Joy here did with Sadness, but having a common agreement on how do we play together, like my family and chocolate cakes. And as a team member, we can contribute to this a lot, right? By being really good at what we do, like the pizza guys, but at the same time sharing skills, like we saw the hockey example. And then we want to balance a micro and a macro vision, like your dad when he's driving. And we also can contribute by being very open and very accepting to ideas, like the Post-it note when it was created, and showing a lot of trust and allowing time to develop this trust. So yeah, this is it. I'm super happy to take any questions or to discuss any ideas that came to mind. So I'm going to stop now and listen to you. I'm going to also show you my email just in case later on you have any doubts or want more musics or can show me examples. But yeah, I'm happy to stop and hear from you.
That was awesome. Thank you.
No worries. Do you have any questions? You're still digesting all.
You answered all of my questions.
All right. Well, I hope that's good. I hope that's that you will find as well. I'm sure you'll find these examples, not just in jazz, but also in other types of music. So if you're hearing music and you want to pay attention to what the musicians are doing, and if you have those examples, then you can discuss them, or even in sports. I'm sure you play a bunch of sports and you can see how these dynamics play into it. So yeah, I hope this was useful.
Just for clarification, is all jazz improvised?
not all jazz is improvised, but there's always some sort of improvisation component into jazz. It's one of the key defining things. So there's jazz that is more structured and jazz that is way more free. But in general, there's a component of, okay, now there's space for you to improvise and just explore new things, even if it's within a limit of a structure that is given.